marhaba, and hello to all our friends, brothers and sisters around the world. I'm historian and writer, American Jack Dempsey, and I live in Crete today, and I'm here with Muhammad Jihad Ismael, a friend of mine, a writer and historian also, who lives in the Gaza territory. And we've been, from week to week or so, publishing a little discussion on different topics we feel are important, because we feel that the Palestinian topic is important and that the world needs to keep the conversation going and to create enough pressure on our different governments' representatives until policy changes result in changes for the prisoner lifestyle, you might say, of the Palestinian people, who have been in this condition in Gaza alone for 74 years. So, Mohammed, I want to thank you again for speaking with myself and the world today. Once again, I would like, if you could, to paint us a condition report this week. It is Thursday, June 23rd, 2022, and we've often talked about how stark and terrible the conditions in Gaza are, but I think we definitely agree that the world needs to hear and hear again what's going on there. We cannot just let this suffering go on and forget about it. Could you please tell us what the challenges are of this early summer? It's been getting hot and there's a shortage of drinking water, all kinds of things, please.
Thank you, brother. I am so happy to have this opportunity again and again. In fact, we are trying to tell people who are watching us from all over the world, what happened here in Gaza. Gaza is the biggest open air prison in the world. Maybe media doesn't reflect most of the facts, most of the events who are happening here in Gaza. Maybe most of the events and actions and the news are still covered. So we have to reveal this cover to let people know what exactly is happening here in Gaza and how much people are suffering in their daily life. The situation in Gaza is still very bad. We have something crazy in the markets, in the shops. Prices are very, very expensive. Yesterday I went to buy a bottle of cooking oil. I bought it with $3. And of course, it's not a fine kind of cooking oil, but a humble kind, Egyptian product. I bought it with $3. In the normal case, I buy it with $1.50. So we have the double. Everything is expensive, not only the cooking oil, everything, even the bread.
And there are three different entities, the PA, Hamas, and the Israeli government, which together combine and collude to set these kinds of prices. It seems to me that malnutrition is at the foundation of the mistreatment that the Palestinians endure. It's a statistic we've quoted often in our talks, but it sticks with me all the time that if you have 2.5 million people in Gaza, half of them children, and the Israelis, and we know historically where else people's diet has been controlled very carefully while they're in confinement, illegitimate confinement. The Israelis perhaps allow 200, maybe 250 trucks with food and energy supplies and so forth per day. And if you do the math on that, you're talking about maybe 12,500 people being fed and supplied off of one truck. It's simply impossible, but it's happening every day.
Yes, brother. That bad situation, in fact, leads people to some people to commit suicide or to attempt to do the suicide action. Just in the very few weeks ago, we had something horrible. We have horrible numbers of suicide attempts and suicide actions.
Well, I just certainly want to repeat to listeners that it's very, very important for them to take the time to make a phone call, to write a letter to their government representatives and let them know about the suffering of 2.5 million people, not to mention the rest of the Palestinians in refugee camps in the occupied West Bank and Jerusalem, that this cannot be allowed to pass any longer.
Yes,
So,
let me please clarify something very, very important for people. I want to tell you that every week we have so many cases of suicide, but unfortunately, no one can speak in media about these actions of suicide. If you look to the media of Hamas or the media of PA, all of them are keeping silence. No one is talking that we have people in Gaza are burning themselves or jumping from high floors, high buildings, or taking some poisons. You know, if you look to the Palestinian media, no one is talking. They want the Palestinian person to be shown to the world just in one image, just in one style, just to clarify that the Palestinian person is only a victim for the Israelis. You know, but they are hiding the other picture for this Palestinian man who is a victim for their corruption. We have to be honest in front of people. We have not to be afraid to tell the truth. Of course, we are a victim for the apartheid Israeli state, and we are suffering since so many decades from Israel and its policies. But in the same time, we are a victim for PA and Hamas and their destructive policies. So much people are committing suicide, but no one is talking about them. If you monitor all the news, all the programs at Al Jazeera channel, which is broadcasting from Qatar, around the clock, you will never see any piece of news about those people who are committing suicide in Gaza. Yeah.
and the reason why. So, Muhammad, do you think, a quick question, do you think it would be appropriate for people to bring up this reality? In other words, there are countries around the world that send money and support to the PA, at least, and in some indirect ways to the people of Gaza. Is it important for people to tell their government representatives that the money must be conditional on the Palestinians being able to elect a new government? The Palestinians need a government that can help them. And this is not what they have, as you say, because of corruption. Would it help for people to say, make the help that you send, the money that you send, make the Palestinian governments allow new elections?
Yes. Unfortunately, we have too much corruption, and we are victims, as I told you, for the both governments, the government of Gaza and the government of West Bank. Also, we are a victim for the European Union and the other Western countries, USA, Canada, Australia, etc. You know,
because as you've said, as you've said, they do not supervise how the money is distributed. They may send the money, but they do not supervise how it is distributed, and so it is all stolen away. Right, and it cannot help people. I think you've frozen.
I think
there,
this is a problem. I think they should make some sort of monitoring, some sort of supervision. But unfortunately, they doesn't make anything like that.
Well, related to this, let me ask you what we agreed would be a question of the week. As you know, there's a very fine Palestinian writer, Ramzy Baroud, who often publishes articles at Counterpunch, at the internet site called Counterpunch. This one was on June 17th, and it was called "The Palestinians Are Bound to Win." And it's a striking headline because, as he articulates in the piece, the population of the Arab and Palestinian peoples in that region are sooner than later going to outnumber by a great deal the Jewish population. Now, if Israel is known as, right now at least, according to some people, a Jewish democracy, this, he argues, means that Zionism must come to an end. The system of exclusion and apartheid must come to an end when the Palestinian and Arab population vastly outnumber the Jewish population on that landscape. How then do you think most Palestinian people want to approach this future? As we've said many times, they have no wish to destroy Israel, to push Israeli as Jewish people into the sea or anything like that. They want to live together like they used to. So how do you think, as the population changes, the Palestinians will want to approach this opportunity? Will they extend a hand of partnership? Will they what?
Actually, I don't believe in this issue. I don't think that the population change will make something good for the Palestinian cause. If we became 20 or 30 million, what will happen? What we will achieve with our too much people? I think, on contrary, this will make us more poor, more suffering, because we haven't resources. If our population still increase, we will not defeat Israel. We will not achieve victory, but we will be more poor. I will remind you that India, I think they are more than 1 billion people. India was colonized and ruled by Great Britain, and you cannot make any sort of comparison if you want to speak about population between the population of Great Britain and India. India was colonized and ruled by Great Britain. China, the biggest country in the world, if you want to speak about population. Also, China even has more population than India. China, for too many decades, was ruled and colonized by Japan. So I don't believe in this change. Even if we have this kind of a change, even if we became more than the Israelis in our number, I think this doesn't mean anything. This will achieve any something for us.
All right, let me ask you, when Ramzy Baroud wrote this article, he was speaking from the demography, from the sheer counting numbers of how many Palestinians and Arabs are being born, can be expected to be around in the next generation or two, and how many for the Jewish side. And I suppose he means that when the Palestinian situation, as you say, becomes more desperate and more poor, it's hard to imagine how it can get worse from where it is. But when that happens, that there's going to be some kind of a desperation movement to say, we have had enough, we are not going to starve to death or disappear, we will have change, we are the majority, and it might get quite difficult for a while. But then you don't see any good side to there being more Palestinians and Arabs than Jewish people. You don't see
Yes,
anything,
yes,
in other words, that would help them. You say,
yes,
I mean, we know about defeating Israel, and we know about what some people mean by victory, but they are not the majority. The majority of the Palestinians want to live together. Isn't that true?
yes, yes, yes. I agree with you. But even if you want to speak about numbers, I think we are not going even to achieve this majority, because now the domination inside Israel is for the ultra-Orthodox Jews, the religious Jews, you know, the right wing. And those religious Jews who are shaping the majority now in Israel, they have the same birth rate like the Arabs of Palestine. They are making too much births. You know, the average for the family, if you want to speak about the religious Jews, is similar to the Palestinian families. Each family, in average, has between 5 to 6 to 7 children. So they have the same rate of ours, you know. And those people now are shaping the majority inside Israel, you know. So I think in the same time is, of course, we are achieving like uh, an increasing in our number, but in the same time also Jews are achieving the same increasing. Another thing, we have a sort of drain. We are draining some population, those people who are immigrating to Europe and to other Arab countries. We have thousands of Palestinians who are immigrating each year, whether through normal and official ways, or by other ways like going through sea, by smuggling, etc. You know.
Yes,
So
yes.
yes, so we have thousands of youth are abandoning Palestine every year. Yeah.
Well,
So in one hand, we have an increasing in our number and in our population, but in the other hand, we have a sort of a drain, because too much people are immigrating and other people are committing suicide.
you know what? I wish we could invite Ramzy Baroud to come on to a discussion with us so that perhaps he could explain better what it was he was talking about then. But nonetheless, excuse me, I think his article at least brought out of you some very important information and point of view on that. So I thank you for entertaining the question. Now, the other thing we wanted to accomplish today was to share a little bit of some of the research on ancient Palestine that has been coming out of the archaeology in recent decades from all over the world. Different schools, universities have funded and done the actual digging and have published their reports on websites and so forth for just about every major city of the ancient world. And the Philistines, the sea peoples, are present in all those places. So I would like to read a passage from this book published by Assaf Yasur-Landau called The Philistines and Aegean Migration at the End of the Late Bronze Age, published in 2010, Cambridge University Press. And what I like about this man's work, of all the different works on the Palestinian Philistines that I've studied, is that he approaches the work with such a fine-tooth analysis. He really takes his time to get into every bit of the detail, the landscape, the kinds of structures, the dating of different kinds of evidences, and how much weight we should put on different things. And I thought it would be important for people to understand what some of the real solid conclusions this archaeologist and many others are beginning to come to about the nature of the Philistines or Palestinians' arrival in Canaan, because it was said for a long time. I'll start right in where he says, quote, bearing in mind the commonly accepted notion of the Philistines' aggressive maritime nature, it may be surprising that fear of outside attack by either Egyptians or others and the need for access to sheltered harbors were not obvious considerations when they chose sites for settlement. Rather, the common factor, for example, at Ekron, Ashdod, Ashkelon, Tel El-Safi, Gath, is their position in the midst of considerable areas of arable land. Rather than the sea was the main resource that the Philistine migrants sought. Muhammad, your image has turned sideways. Hello? Yeah, there you go. So I'll continue for a moment. What were the reasons for this distinctly non-Aegean choice of sites? It's been demonstrated elsewhere in this book that there's no direct connection between the possibly violent destruction of Ekron and the Aegean settlement that followed it, while Ashkelon shows no destruction and Gath and Ashdod show only ambiguous evidence. A unified event of a hostile Aegean takeover is highly improbable. However, the destruction of Ugarit and Ras Ibn Hani and the description of the destruction inflicted by the settlers in the camp of the land of Amulu, described by Ramzy III, may be an indication that the choice between an aggressive policy and a peaceful one depended on the parameter of power relations rather than on permanent policy. Despite the variability in the circumstances of settlement and apparently the organizational abilities of the first settlers at each site, the acculturation strategy the Philistines chose was never separation from the local Canaanite culture, as would have been expected in the case of violent conquerors. Instead, as is evident from the nature of combined Aegean and local behavioral patterns reflected in each domestic assemblage that has been excavated, the Aegean migrants chose from the onset a strategy of integration with the local population. They may have already adopted the strategy of acculturation during their move through Syria, as seen in the multi-ethnic Philistine camp on the land battle relief at Medinet Habu in Egypt, which includes not only women, but also men of non-Aegean descent. Although not precluding the option of a violent solution when one seemed necessary, it's likely that the integration strategy at least enabled peaceful interactions and thus facilitated what appears to be the non-violent, opportunistic nature of Philistine settlement. I propose, therefore, that the foundation of Philistine sites was a cooperative effort of both migrants and local Canaanite populations who allied themselves with the newcomers, perhaps as a buffer against the unstable security and economic conditions that accompanied the end of Canaanite urban culture. We can further speculate on the role of local guides in pointing the migrants to unoccupied sites with plenty of arable farmland and no threatening neighbors. So it seems as though these peoples were already quite skilled at enlisting cooperation. They probably knew a lot of the Canaanite peoples from long centuries of trade with them. And when it came time, they chose places that were already unoccupied. They didn't need to be conquered. And their first task was to create farmland so that they could feed their families, along with the Canaanite presence that we see clearly in the archaeology of their temple sites, their homes, their public spaces. These people really were living together on all the different levels that most civilizations do. It makes what he calls early Palestine a multicultural phenomenon. It's made up of many different strands that are borrowing from, learning from, imitating each other, and so forth. So, Muhammad, out of this, I'd like to ask you a question today to close our discussion. That to what degree, help the world understand a little bit, does the Muslim religion and the Quran and Palestinian daily life and values, to what degree does that inheritance manifest itself now? Are there comparable examples of flexibility in philosophical and political and other levels of life for the Palestinians?
Yes, yes. If you look to the Islamic religion, and especially to the holy book, Quran, you will find Islam looks like the sponge. You know, the sponge. Always Islam is qualified to absorb all the ethnicities, all the tribes, all the nations, all the people, colors, the white person, the black person, the red person, the mulatto, the brown, the yellow, all the people, you know. Islam is not a closed religion, but an open religion. It can absorb all the kind, you know. And if you look also to the heritage of Muhammad, the prophet of Islam, also he used to select his companions and his assistants from several ethnicities. He had one of his assistants was Ethiopian, from Ethiopia, you know. A second one was from Persia. Third one was from India, you know. A fourth one was from the Roman Empire, was Italian maybe, or from the Adriatic area. Yeah, one of his notable assistants was a Roman man, you know. So Muhammad wanted to give us a lesson that Islam is not a limited religion, but is opened in front of all the nations and all the people all over the world.
And when you use the word absorb, Muhammad, the flexibility that I'm asking about has to do with people who do not share the Muslim faith or the Muslim religion. Is there room in the Muslim faith and in the Quran for peoples to be not believers of the same religion? Are they okay? Is it okay for them to exist, and can Muslims interact with them?
Of course. First of all, Islam hasn't the right to force anybody to be Muslim by force. You have your choice to be a Muslim or not. This is number one. Number two, if you have an Islamic state or country, in this state, the president shouldn't force any non-Muslim person to be Muslim, shouldn't force anybody to convert to Islam. And this president or this ruler should guarantee all the rights for the Christian, the Jew, the not religious person, any other person who is living in the state. This leader should guarantee the rights for this non-Muslim person. So in Islam, the general concept for Islam or for the political regime in any Islamic country should be built on tolerance and equality. Islam wants that there should be some sort of equality between the Muslim and not the Muslim. If you look to the history of Muhammad and the life of Muhammad, you will find too much stories about this issue. Once a Jew man came to Muhammad complaining from his Muslim neighbor. He said to Muhammad, my Muslim neighbor used to hurt me, used to do something wrong with me. In that time, Muhammad sent for the Muslim man and made some sort of court, like to judge and to see where is the problem and to give the right to the right person. In that time, Muhammad said to the Muslim person, you are wrong, and the Jew man is right, and you have to apologize for him. Second time, a Christian man from Yemen came to one of the companions of Muhammad, the rulers who ruled Arabia after the death of Muhammad. This Christian came to the Islamic ruler and asked him to judge between him and the Muslim man. Also in this time, the Muslim ruler said to the Muslim person, you are sinner. You are sinner in the right of this Christian man and you have to apologize, and you have to accept my sanctions. I am going to put sanctions over you because you have not the right to do this action again. You know.
Yes.
So if you speak about the idealistic Islam, the pure era of Islam, we had this utopian image of tolerance and equality. But unfortunately, decade after decade or century after century, Islam started to be polluted by some corrupted people who used to mix Islam with their political interests and their personal interests. You know, that's why they didn't reflect a pure image like the one which we saw in the dawn of Islam.
Thank you for such a wonderful answer. And I think people will be happy and surprised to hear again, perhaps, that, well, there is a great tradition, a very ancient tradition in Palestinian society that addresses things such as cooperation, multicultural approach to life, flexibility in relationships. These are all things that promise well for a better, by which I mean more peaceful future. So I want to thank you. Our Zoom time has run out again, Muhammad, but thank you very much for the pleasure of our conversation. As always, we wish you and your wonderful, beautiful family every blessing. And is there anything you'd like to add? The only thing I would add is, again, to remind people to take the time to write a letter, an email, a phone call to their representatives and demand changes in the policies that allow the Palestinians to be treated like this. How about you, Muhammad?
Thank you, brother, for this opportunity. I want to finish with a very, very simple issue. I want to tell you and tell the people that here in Palestine, we had this sort of equality between the Muslim, the Christian, and the Jew. Also, we had a minority of Druze. You know the Druze minority.
Yes.
Yeah. So Muslim, Christian, Jew, and Druze used to live here in Palestine with a total equality. You know, without any sort of discrimination. You know. So
yes.
just a very few decades ago, we had this beautiful image.
Yes, and your family, and your family, Muhammad, remembers that your village, your original village was called Shaphir 74 years ago. They were forced out of there at gunpoint. Let me close by reminding people there's a wonderful film at YouTube called The Land Speaks Arabic. The Land Speaks Arabic. You can hear all the Palestinian elders you want talking about this age where they lived as family and neighbors in the same neighborhoods with Jews, Muslims, Christians, Arabs, Druze, and nobody was really that concerned about what your philosophical and cosmic ideas were. They lived together in as good a community as human beings have ever created. Muslim culture offers endless doorways into that kind of justice, and I'm glad to hear more about it with every conversation. Thank you, Muhammad, very much, and we will speak to you next time.
Thank you, brother. Thank you so much.